Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And following up from several things I was talking about yesterday, I wanted to sort of express a couple of opinions that I've sort of just had circulating in my head because it's it's something again that's always been bugging me about whenever anybody's ever used the word woke as an insult. Now, to be honest, I could tell you the whole rigmarole about why it's used and the fact that, to be honest, it's something that I think most people who categorize others as falling under that category would probably say it doesn't mean anything. It's not worth getting upset about. Woke is merely just a word used by the far right to almost exasperate the absolute ludicrous behavior of those whose ideologies, political, social, economic, are completely opposed to their own. Which is kind of interesting because as this sort of year has gone on, I'm starting to notice a small pattern about the fact that actually, and very bizarrely enough, is that not only that I do, whether or not you want to say I fall into this category is entirely optional, but personally I think I probably do. But I'm also beginning to notice a small pattern of the fact that maybe I'm not completely wrong about everything. Maybe that's the reason why people were so exasperated. Well, the right wing are so exasperated, like the Daily Mail, the Express. That video I did about Liz Truss's campaign at CPAC in Washington, and how and the responses people got from it, and even when I talked about the European Union's national anthem, the Ode to Joy, and the actual sort of responses that came out of it, in lieu of basically everything I talked about, from the Ramses Project to the growing number of nations that joined over the years, and how even I'll probably even do one about like the how NATO first got started, because that should be it's important to know, ladies and gentlemen, that when you hear all this racket about people wanting to forcibly remove us from the court of European rights, it's also worth reminding what those rights actually are and just what they mean to us. We might not be in the union any longer. Don't look at me for that. You know, I voted to remain. You know, sue me. It was the first big vote I was ever allowed to have because I was 18 at the time. So that's one thing, is that maybe just on how people responded to what I was saying, I might not be in the wrong about what I think anymore. And something even more curious has popped up over the last couple of days that I'm not entirely sure how I can articulate them. And usually I'm very, very good at being very articulate, as you know. So it's one of my favorite words. So sue me. But I don't even know really how I'm meant to say it. But is it possible, ladies and gentlemen? I mean this in the nicest possible way. Is it possible that actually that we need to completely start over? That's the thing I wanted to ask. Is it absolutely out of the question to suggest that actually there needs to be something of an uprooting of the status quo? Is there something that needs to be said about, well, whenever you watch Prime Minister's Questions, it's basically a 1 hour slanging match of one person throwing an insult at the other and saying that we're better because this, and this, and because we're not this, that, and the other. It's that sort of, and then Lindsay Hoyle will occasionally shout for order, even though I know it was the previous Speaker of the House was famous for screaming order, order. It wasn't quite like that, but you get the idea. It was a very dour accent, I felt. But yeah, there's something about the current situation, ladies and gentlemen, in which things need to be changed. And you don't really need to go as far as Parliament to notice a certain level of anti-socialism, or rather, or perhaps antisocial behavior that's taking place in our very lives. For example, the job I do, because I work in a casino, and a large part of it is literally about sitting at a table, dealing poker. It could be Texas, it could be Omaha, it could be Baccarat, it could be Crazy Pineapple. I will do that, and the sole objective is to deal the cards, referee the game, collect in the money, take in rake for, it's just how the casino makes its money through these games, and then distribute the winnings to the winning or winners of each hand. That's essentially all I've really got to do for the majority of my days. And the problem lies in the fact that, ladies and gentlemen, is that there's no prerequisites, especially when you're working face to face with customers. There's no prerequisite, and there's no desire necessarily, and there's virtually no real consequence for the customers to, that again, for those who've ever been to a casino, they know fine well that they're there to play the games, and they're not there to necessarily, make small talk with the dealers or with any of the members of staff. That's completely fair and fine enough and stuff like that. But I don't know. There's something wrong with the profession in terms of just, although you could say this is something that's been existing since the beginning of history, but there's something wrong in the fact that all I appear to be in this profession is literally just a stopgap between the game being started at all and from somebody winning a certain amount of money. It feels as if, and because I'm viewed upon as more like a stopgap, it means that I'll be treated as a stopgap, basically as nothing more than just a hole to be filled with food and stuff like that. And and this is almost also like one of those sentiments that's almost like trickled down through the different members of staff, from the managements to the supervisors to the other game dealers and stuff like that. All we're there is to do a job that sadly is almost indicative of the sort of political climate we're in right now. It's a bunch of it's a very small group who each play games and will try to win as much money from everybody else. And that's kind of like almost very much like Parliament, because there'll be angry words thrown about the tables left, right, and centre. And I don't really want to like phrase a lot of them. A lot of them are quite rude, to say the least. But again, if that's not like the best metaphor for the situation with politics right now, well, I couldn't tell you what else would be. It's just a minority number of people throwing money at each other. And unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, it's, again, one of these environments where it's not so much like morals it's more manners, really. It's not necessarily the thing that's like, you're not if you're not going to win or you're not going to be paid for using manners, then what's the point? Which you may say has its points here and there, but what I'm trying to like get at, just to like summarize all this up, is this just the natural order of things, or is it another thing entirely to try and be a little bit better? Now, whether you want to say, going to a place in which people swear and throw money at each other all day makes you a better person, I can't really say, and it's not particularly my place to say what is right and what's wrong. But it's just, but I think ultimately what it comes down to is what you feel is the right thing, and whether you feel that you're just not up to this, or you think that it's not right just for people to literally spend their days just throwing money at each other. Well, maybe it is time for a change, and a change would certainly be good for this country, I reckon. Something just to sort of greatly emphasize that actually, you know what, trying to be a good person, trying to uphold the law, trying to encourage things that wouldn't normally be encouraged for any other reason than it's just for us to get along with each other. It's a more encouraging thought, because what I think it means more than anything is to try and be a better person. It's not easy, ladies and gentlemen, trust me, to try and be a better person, but you know what? there's plenty of ways to try, and whether you want to say you fit the bill or there's still things that we need to have a hard look at ourselves in terms of changing, then that's entirely up to us. So hopefully that now that I've sort of like almost raised the situation a little bit about what I think and stuff like that, I'm beginning to wonder just how many others share this sentiment, because we could talk until the cows come home about conflicts, of violence, of war, and about how nobody really trusts one another. But what about rebuilding trust? What about doing something that will make our lives better for everybody? It's worth a shot. Everything is worth a shot as long as you're willing to commit to it, and commitment I shall.